The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the formal dining room of my parents' house, a room that had witnessed countless family dinners just like this one. But tonight felt different. Maybe it was the way my sister Victoria sat at my father's right hand, perfectly poised in her designer suit, or how my mother kept glancing at me with that mixture of pity and disappointment I'd grown so familiar with. "So Emma," my father began, swirling his expensive wine, "Victoria tells me Morgan Industries just landed another major contract." He beamed at my sister, his pride evident. $300 million in new business this quarter alone. Victoria preened under his praise. "Well, Daddy, when you know how to run a real business, these things just happen naturally." I pushed my food around my plate, trying to ignore the familiar sting of their words. At 32, I was supposed to be used to this by now. The constant comparisons, the subtle digs, the way they held Victoria up as the golden child while treating me like a cautionary tale. "And what about you, Emma?" My mother's voice dripped with false concern. "Still working on that little, what do you call it? Tech startup." "It's a digital solutions company, Mom," I corrected quietly. "We specialize in corporate restructuring and dash." "Oh, honey," she interrupted, sharing a knowing look with Victoria, "don't you think it's time to get a real job? Your father could easily find you a position at Morgan Industries. Something entry-level, of course, but it would be a start." I gripped my fork tighter, thinking about the meetings I'd had earlier that day, about the contracts sitting unsigned on my desk, about the truth they'd all learn soon enough. But for now, I maintained my calm facade. "I'm doing fine, Mom. The company is growing dash." "Growing?" Victoria let out a sharp laugh. "Is that what you call working out of that tiny office downtown? How many employees do you even have?" "3. 4 actually," I replied, though in reality I had over 200 staff members across 3 countries. They just operated under different company names, carefully hidden behind layers of corporate structuring. My father set down his wine glass with a heavy sigh. "Emma, we're worried about you. You're not getting any younger, and this entrepreneur phase of yours, well, it's becoming embarrassing. Morgan Industries is a Fortune 500 company. Your sister is their youngest VP of operations. Meanwhile, you're playing business owner in some rented office space." I thought about my rented office space, the entire 42nd floor of the city's most prestigious business tower, and had to suppress a smile. "Poor Emma," my mother chimed in, "still playing entrepreneur while your sister runs a real company." That's when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and felt a surge of satisfaction. The message was from my CFO. "Final paperwork is ready. Morgan Industries board has approved the sale. We move forward at 9 a.m. tomorrow." I stood up, smoothing my simple black dress, the one they thought was cheap but actually cost more than Victoria's entire outfit. "Thank you for dinner," I said calmly. "I have an early meeting tomorrow." "Oh." Victoria smirked. "Another pitch to some small business owner?" I smiled, thinking about tomorrow's meeting. "Something like that." As I drove home to my penthouse apartment, the one my family thought was a studio walk-up, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. For 3 years I'd worked in complete secrecy, building Eclipse Technologies into a corporate giant. While my family mocked my little company, I was quietly acquiring failing businesses, restructuring them and turning them into profitable enterprises. And tomorrow, in less than 12 hours, I would be acquiring Morgan Industries, my sister's precious company that had been hemorrhaging money for the past year. They just didn't know it yet. I pulled into my private garage and took the elevator to my penthouse, kicking off my heels as I walked into my home office. The view of the city skyline was spectacular at night, all twinkling lights and possibility. On my desk sat the final acquisition papers for Morgan Industries. Tomorrow everything would change. My phone buzzed again, another message from Victoria. "Hope you didn't feel too bad about dinner. We just want what's best for you. Maybe you should come shadow me at work sometime, see how a real business operates." I left her message unread and instead opened the folder marked Project Morgan. Inside were months of financial reports showing the company's steady decline, the board meetings minutes where they desperately sought solutions, and finally, the buyout agreement that would put Morgan Industries under the control of Eclipse Technologies, my company. Tomorrow would certainly be interesting. The next morning I arrived at Morgan Industries headquarters an hour early. The lobby was already buzzing with nervous energy. Word of a major company meeting had spread. though few knew the real reason. I watched from a quiet corner as my sister Victoria strutted through the front doors, her designer heels clicking against the marble floor, completely unaware that her world was about to turn upside down. My phone buzzed. "Boardroom is ready, Ms. Reed. All paperwork in place." My assistant had used my mother's maiden name, the name I conducted all my business under. Emma Reed, not Emma Morgan. Another carefully constructed layer of privacy that had kept my success hidden from my family. At precisely 8:55 a.m., I took the private elevator to the top floor. The boardroom was filled with anxious faces, board members, senior executives, and of course my father and sister. Victoria sat near the head of the table, scrolling through her phone with an air of bored indifference. My father stood by the window, his usual confidence slightly shaken by the mysterious nature of this meeting. Neither of them noticed me slip into the room and take a seat in the corner. Why would they? To them, I was nothing more than a failed entrepreneur playing at business. At 9 a.m. sharp, the doors opened again. My CFO, Michael Chin, walked in carrying a leather portfolio. "Good morning," he announced, his voice commanding immediate attention. "I'm here representing Eclipse Technologies." The room fell silent. Eclipse Technologies had become something of a corporate boogeyman over the past year, the mysterious company that had been acquiring struggling businesses across the country. Some called us vultures, others called us saviors. None of them knew who really ran the company. "As you're all aware," Michael continued, "Morgan Industries has been facing significant financial challenges. Your stock has dropped 60% in the past year, you've lost major contracts to competitors, and your market share is declining rapidly." Victoria's face flushed red. "We're implementing new strategies, which have failed," Michael cut in smoothly. "Which is why the board has agreed to Eclipse's acquisition offer." My father stepped forward, his face tight with anger. "Now wait just a minute. I founded this company. You can't just Actually, Mr. Morgan, we can. The board voted unanimously last night. The paperwork is already signed." Michael opened his portfolio and began distributing documents. "Eclipse Technologies now owns a controlling interest in Morgan Industries." The room erupted in chaos. Board members whispered urgently to each other. Victoria looked like she might faint. My father grabbed the papers, his hands shaking as he read through them. "But who?" he started, his voice trembling. "Who owns Eclipse Technologies?" That was my cue. I stood up slowly, smoothing my designer suit, no simple black dress today. "I do." The room fell silent again, but this time all eyes were on me. Victoria's jaw dropped. My father's face went pale. "Emma," he whispered. I walked to the front of the room, my heels clicking against the floor just as confidently as Victoria's had earlier. "I'm the founder and CEO of Eclipse Technologies. That little startup you've been mocking? It's now worth over $2 billion. And as of this morning, it owns Morgan Industries." Victoria jumped to her feet. "This is a joke. Has to be. You work out of a tiny office downtown." I smiled. "That tiny office is a front. Eclipse Technologies occupies 3 floors of the Metropolitan Tower. We employ over 200 people across 3 countries. And we specialize in turning failing companies like this one into profitable enterprises." But, my father stammered, "Why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me?" I asked quietly. "When have you ever believed in anything I've done?" The silence that followed was deafening. Years of dismissive comments, mocking laughter, and patronizing advice hung in the air between us. "Now," I said, turning to address the entire room, "let's discuss the changes that will be implemented immediately." The changes at Morgan Industries were swift and comprehensive. Within the first week, I had replaced most of the senior management team, including Victoria. My sister's face when I informed her that her services were no longer required was a study in disbelief and rage. "You can't fire me," she had spluttered. "I'm your sister." "Exactly," I replied calmly. "And for years, you've made it clear that family relationships don't matter in business. Isn't that what you always said, Victoria? It's just business, nothing personal." She stormed out of the office, but not before threatening to tell our parents. I simply smiled, knowing they were next on my list. My father lasted exactly 3 days after Victoria's departure before storming into my new office. his old office demanding answers. The leather chairs that had once made him look so imposing now seemed to swallow his diminished presence. "What are you doing to my company?" he demanded, his voice lacking its usual authority. I looked up from the financial reports I was reviewing. "Saving it, actually. Did you know Morgan Industries was 3 months away from bankruptcy? The contracts Victoria bragged about? They were losing money. The expansion plans? Unsustainable. You were running this company into the ground." "That's not." He started, then stopped, his face flushing. "We had some temporary setbacks." "Temporary?" I pulled out a file and slid it across the desk. "Here's what your temporary setbacks looked like. Revenue down 60%. Market share plummeting. Client satisfaction at an all-time low. Face it, Dad, your golden child was destroying everything you built." He slumped in the chair, suddenly looking every bit his age. "Why didn't you just tell us? About Eclipse, about your success?" I leaned back, considering his question. "Would it have mattered? When I tried to tell you about my company's growth, you called it playing entrepreneur. When I attempted to discuss business strategies, you told me to get a real job. You and Mom were so busy praising Victoria's failures that you couldn't see my success. Emma, we just wanted what was best for you." "No," I corrected him gently. "You wanted me to be Victoria. To follow your path, play by your rules. But I built something better, something stronger. And I did it without your approval or support." The silence stretched between us, heavy with years of missed opportunities and misplaced pride. Finally, my father stood up. "So what happens now?" "Now?" I smiled. "Now you retire. The board has already approved a generous pension package. More than fair considering the company's condition. Victoria will receive a reasonable severance. And Mom." I paused, remembering all her cutting remarks about my little business. Mom can finally stop worrying about my career choices. That evening, as I stood at my office window watching the sunset paint the city skyline in shades of gold and pink, my phone buzzed with a message. It was from my mother. "We had no idea. All this time. I'm so sorry, Emma." I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I thought about the long journey that had brought me here. The late nights working in that small office they'd mocked, the careful planning, the strategic acquisitions that had built Eclipse Technologies into what it was today. I thought about the satisfaction of proving them wrong, not with words, but with undeniable success. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Victoria. "I underestimated you. I never thought. Well, I guess you showed us all." I smiled, remembering her words from just a few days ago about real business. Finally, I typed out a response to both of them. "Sometimes the biggest successes come from those you least expect. Maybe next time, you'll look past your assumptions and really see what's in front of you." 1 year later, Morgan Industries had completely transformed under Eclipse's leadership. Profits were up, employee satisfaction had skyrocketed, and our market share had doubled. My parents had settled into a quiet retirement, their pride in me now tinged with a healthy dose of humility. Victoria had started her own small consulting firm, learning the hard way that success requires more than just a prestigious title and family connections. As for me, I kept the small downtown office, my first real business space. I even held meetings there sometimes just as a reminder of where I started. But now, when people dismissed it as tiny or insignificant, I just smiled, knowing that appearances can be deceiving and that sometimes, the most powerful position is letting others underestimate you. The last time I saw my family was at a charity gala I hosted. Victoria approached me, looking somewhat humbled in her off-the-rack dress. "You know," she said, swirling her champagne, "I never thought I'd say this, but you're better at this than I ever was." I touched my glass to hers gently. "It was never about being better, Victoria. It was about being different. While you were trying to maintain Dad's legacy, I was building my own. And that's exactly what I had done, built something entirely my own. Something that had grown from being underestimated and overlooked into an empire that even my family couldn't ignore. Sometimes the sweetest success isn't in proving others wrong, but in proving yourself right." The gala wasn't the last time I saw my family. 2 months later, during a routine board meeting, my assistant interrupted with an urgent message. Morgan Industries' original office building, my father's pride and joy, was on fire. I rushed to the scene, watching flames engulf the structure where my father had built his dream. Firefighters battled the blaze while local news crews captured every moment. Then I saw them, my parents and Victoria, standing across the street looking devastated. "Everything's gone," my father said when I approached, his voice breaking. "All the original documents, photos, awards, 30 years of history." I placed a hand on his shoulder. "Not everything." The next morning I invited them to my private office. Not the downtown one they knew about, but my real office in the Metropolitan Tower. The walls were lined with preserved documents and photographs I'd quietly collected over the years. Dad's first business license, newspaper clippings of Morgan Industries' early successes, even the original company logo sketch he'd drawn on a napkin. "But how?" Mom whispered, touching the framed documents with trembling fingers. "When I was studying Morgan Industries before the acquisition, I made copies of everything important. I knew these meant something to our family, even if business is business." Victoria moved closer to examine a photo of her and Dad at her college graduation. "You saved our history while taking over our company," she said softly. "That's actually brilliant." "I learned from watching all of you," I replied. "Both what to do and what not to do in business. Dad taught me the importance of preserving legacy even if he never meant to. You, Victoria, showed me how easy it is to lose everything if you rely solely on your name. And Mom," I turned to her, "you taught me that appearances can be deceiving." Mom wiped away tears. "We were so wrong about you, Emma. All these years. The past is the past," I said firmly. "What matters now is what we build from here." That evening, as my family left my office, Dad lingered behind. "You know," he said, looking around at the preserved pieces of his life's work, "I always thought Victoria would be the one to carry on my legacy. I never imagined you would not only carry it but transform it into something greater." I smiled, remembering all those family dinners where they dismissed my little startup.